So, brethren, as we keep these days of unleavened bread, as Mr. Armstrong used to say, why are we here? Why are we here? He always started out, I remember on the holy days, he always started out with, why are we here? We're here to keep the feast of unleavened bread. God commanded the Israelites to observe a special 7-day festival as a memorial of his delivery of his people, the Israelites, from Egypt. In Exodus 12, verse 14, if you would turn there, please. I wrote everything by hand, so I didn't write the scriptures down, so a little too much writing. So we can turn there. Exodus 12, we'll start in verse 14. And this day shall be unto you a memorial, and you shall keep the feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast day and an ordinance forever. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven and out of your houses. For whosoever casts leavened bread, whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, the soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there should be a holy convocation, and in the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them. And save that every man must eat, and that only may be done of you. Verse 17, and you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in the selfsame day I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. Verse 18, in the first month of the 14th day of the month of Even, you shall eat unleavened bread until 21st day of the month of Even. 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your houses. Whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. In verse 20, he shall eat nothing leavened, and all your habitations shall eat unleavened bread. You know, the land of Egypt is sometimes referred to in the Bible as a symbol of sin. Just as the Israelites departed from Egypt the day after the Passover, so we must depart, as Christians, we must depart from sin. In 1 Corinthians, you don't have to turn there, I'll just read that to you. Paul tells us, therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with leaven of malice or wickedness, but with unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I've been reading this book. I've been reading it quite a while because it's a history book, and it's got a lot of dates and cities and names, and I can only absorb so much. But the name of this book is Ordinary Men. And I forgot to write the author's name down. It's called the Reserve Police Battalion 101. In 1939, World War II began when Germany invaded Poland. At that time, you know, the Nazis, their goal was to eradicate the Jewish people. And so rather than take men from the younger men from the army to deal with that, they started bringing up men, middle-aged men, family men, of working and middle-class background, from mostly in the beginning from the city of Hamburg. They were considered to be too old of use to the German army, and they had been drafted in a new unit called the order police. To do in essence, to become professional killers to the Jewish people. And by 1942, they ended up with 210,000 of these men doing that work of eradicating the Jews. And I got thinking about ordinary men or ordinary people. Rather, are we ordinary people? You know, somebody came in here, looked around, they said, wow, ordinary people are dressed nice. But we're ordinary people. But are we ordinary people? Rather, we are a called people. In 1 Peter, chapter 2, verse 9. But you are a chosen generation of royal priesthood and holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him, whom hath called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light. Verse 10, which in times past were not a people, but now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, now have obtained mercy. Also in Romans 12, verse 2, I think I'm going over my 3 scripture limit, but it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transferred by renewing of your mind. Our goal is to be called, chosen, and faithful. You know, we're a called people, and some people right now are in the process of being called. But our ultimate goal is to be called, chosen, and faithful. You know, keeping these days help us to get there. You know, I look at the Israelites and what they saw God do for them. They saw the plagues. They saw the death of the firstborn, parting of the Red Sea, clouds during the day, pillar of fire at night, manna from the sky. Even the Egyptians gave them gold and fine linen just to get them out of there because of all these plagues. But it seems like just a few days later, they were starting to complain. They were starting to get an attitude. In Exodus 14, verse 11, I'll just read that to you. Because there were no graves in Egypt, this is the Israelites complaining, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Verse 12, is it not this word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. You know, after all these miracles, and that was their attitude. You know, this is an example for us. And as we keep these days of trying to get sin out of our life, I think one of the hardest sins is trying to keep a good attitude at times. You know, with all the pressures of life, things happen to us. So, I'd like to tell you a little story about my grandson. My grandson lives down the road from us in my son's house. My son has a house up by us, and we have a house in King of Prussia. But he lives in that house. And every morning, he comes up for breakfast. And every morning, we ask him how he's doing. And so, you know, it's too hot outside. It's too cold outside. And, you know, he reminds me of Eeyore and Winnie the Pooh, you know, and he's got like a dark cloud over him. And, you know, it's, you don't like the people he works with. And this job is just a temporary job. He's going back to school. Well, he went back to school. But it was his temporary job. And, but every day he had something to complain about. And Judy used to try to lighten him up, you know. She used to sing to him, it's a good day to have a good day, trying to cheer him up. And, you know, trying to be upbeat and pleasant. And trying to get him to change his attitude. And one day, I guess I just about had enough with it. I said, man, you got to lighten up, okay? You know, you're only 20 years old. You know, you got 50 years left to work. So before you can retire, so you might as well make it the best of it. And we got talking, and I said, you know, you got to have a Finn attitude. And he looked at me like, what? A Finn attitude? And Finn is my dog, okay? He's a border collie. And, you know, I have a farm, and every morning he goes out with me. And he's bred and, well, it has been his breeding instincts, okay, been over the years, made him a dog he is today. So he comes out to the barn with me, and I say he's got to have a Finn attitude because he loves to work. You know, he loves to work. He loves to go to the barn. He's like my right-hand man or right-hand dog in the barn. He knows what to do. You know, he don't care what time it is, at night or day. He's there with me, willing to go. He doesn't care about how hot it is or how cold it is. You know, his job is to keep the animals in place, and he knows his job. I don't have to tell him what to do. You know, he puts his whole heart into it. He'd rather work than eat. You know, I could tell him to move sheep from one pasture to another. All I got to say is go, and he knows exactly what I mean. And plus, he's a happy dog. And so every day, when my grandson would leave for work, Judy would say, it's a good day to have a good day, and I would say, have a Finn attitude. So, and he'd give me, oh, brother, you know, he'd start groaning. So, you know, if we do something God wants us to do, we should do it with our whole heart. That's a lesson to be learned there. You know, as we keep these days and getting sin out of our lives, there should be a void or a vacuum. You know, what are we filling that with? You know, I look around, it's springtime. Okay? We look at God's creation. You know, let's fill it with something like that. It's a beautiful time of year. You know, I look forward to, you know, putting my cows and sheep out on pasture. I'm tired of feeding them hay. And, you know, I have a greenhouse that's full of plants. You know, Judy has a greenhouse full of plants. And I like going in there because these plants are, you know, just waiting to be planted. And it's nice to see the green and the flowers that she has planted. You know, Job says, and if we turn to Job, verse 12, we'll start in verse 7. It talks about the beauty of the earth. But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee. Or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. Who knoweth not in all these things the hand of God has wrought this? In whose hands is the soul of everything living thing, and the breath of all mankind. So this is what we should be filling that void with, brethren. You know, God's creation. Also in Romans 1, verse 20, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood that these things that are made, even in the eternal power and God, so they are without excuse. You know, the other day I got a sick calf, and I went down to the barn and take care of the calf. It was in the middle of the night, and check on him, and then I went to check on my sheep, and one of them was having a lamb, and she was having a problem. So it was a good timing on my part. So I helped her. You know, I've done this dozens of times, helping have them calves and lambs. But, you know, it never ceases to amaze me. It's a miracle. It really is. And every time I see it, I thank God. because it truly is a miracle. So, brother, in conclusion, I'd like to read something that packages this all up. I don't know how many people remember these, the YOU lessons, okay? And this is the special feast edition, and not feast, spring festival edition. And this is my son, Jeff. And this is from spring of 1983. And it's pretty good. It's got a lot of information in here. But what I turned to, I don't remember ever seeing this before. Judy was looking for something, and she found this, and she gave it to me. It says notes, okay? So this is, he's got the sermonette and a sermon, and his notes. And this is almost 40 years ago. And it says, sermonette, Mr. Lambert. And this is his notes of what he said about the sermon that he heard. And this was on the feast of, I don't know if it was the last day or the first day or the last day. His notes were, only pride, and he's only 10 years old at this point, and only pride leads and results to contention. Do not become too proud. His handwriting's not the best, so it's hard for me to read. Do not become too proud, or your heart would be lifted up and you will forget about God. No one can eliminate pride from their lives, but we can try to overcome it. You know, we need to obey God's commandments to the full extent. There is a relationship between leavening and pride. Leveling makes bread rise. We should try to be humble. We need to respect authorities. And he spelled authorities right. Knowledge puffs up, charity edifies. And he's got three last words here. And he's got an exclamation point. So I'm going to try to do my best imitation of Mr. Lambert of these three words. We need grace. And that's the end of his notes. But not bad for a 10-year-old. You wonder if kids are listening, but they really are.